I would like to call this meeting of the Human Relations Commission of Urbana to order. Will staff please call the roll?
Stacy Burnett. Carol Bradford.
Here.
Daniel Larson. Frances Rigberg Baker.
Here.
Lisa Mosley. Lolita Dumas.
Here.
Peter Resnick.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Yes, we have a quorum. The first item of business is approval of the agenda. Does everyone have a copy, and do I have a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
All right, Pete has moved approval, and Carol has seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. Secondly, we will have approval of the minutes of our last meeting, which was January 8th, 2020. Do I have a motion for that approval?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion by Carol, a second by Pete. Is there any discussion of the minutes? Any additions or corrections? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same. The motion carries. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak to the commission? Okay. No one wishes to speak. We have now to move on to unfinished business. We have two items here. The first is approval of a donation of $150 to the Champaign County Housing Authority.
And this is the one we discussed back in January, correct?
Yes.
All right. I'll move approval of the $150 donation to Champaign County Housing Authority for, what was the event?
Oh,
It was
it was
Super Bowl.
the Super Bowl event.
The Super Bowl event.
Yes, that's right.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Lolita. Discussion. Does anybody wish to discuss this?
I did get some feedback from Monique James, who said the event was wonderful. They had really good attendance, and they plan on doing it again next year, and hopefully they'll have even more participants, but she said it was a really big success.
That's wonderful. All right. Anybody else? All those in favor of the approval of this donation, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Our next item of unfinished business is to begin our discussion of our goals for the coming year aside from our routine business. I think at this meeting it would be fine if we decide on one or two or three areas, one or two maybe, areas in which we'd like to focus our attention, and then in future meetings decide on specific tasks and action items for those areas. I'd like to open the discussion of that to the Commission.
Okay, so there's a couple of these that I'm really interested in, just because of the work that I do through Rosecrans. And also, I'm involved with the CU Fresh Start program, which is a gun violence deterrence program. I actually supervise the case manager that provides the intensive case management services for that program. And employment training is a really, really big issue. A lot of employers probably without knowing are violating some people's rights. And so I think educating them would be a really good focus for us to start just having some type of interaction with the employers in our community, because knowledge is power, and I think educating them will help give those that live in our community a better chance of getting a fair opportunity to get employment. And then the other one I think is, whenever I tell people I'm on the Human Relations Commission, they have no idea what it is or what I'm talking about. So I really think number 5 is important, that we get a little bit more visibility in the community so that people are aware that we're here and how to access our services. So those are the two big ones for me, and I would say just overall, housing is always on the radar because there's quite a bit of discrimination happening in very subtle ways, mostly by making a lot of hurdles for people to get applications and stuff processed.
Thank you very much, Carol. Would anybody else? Yes, Lilia.
I wanted to echo what Carol said about number 5, the PSAs. I think that will be good. And I think because that targets employment, housing, as well as the public accommodations, I think thinking about Danielle's presentation about the housing, I think we definitely need to have that on our radar in terms of looking at the housing, but also targeting employment. I like what Carol said in terms of educating, and I think that PSA going out to not just only consumers, but also going out to the people that are impacted, as well as employers, as well as to housing people as well. And also the visibility. I was looking at number 4 in terms of the community events, that visibility. I think the more that we can put that on our calendar for us, the more visibility we can have in terms of letting people know who we are. Because similar to Carol, when you say human relations, people don't know what that means. But I think, we've gotten like T-shirts, and I think that will help for people to like identify us as being on the commission. So I like that. And I know that the mayor often does like meet and greet as well. And so I like the other one that talks about Urbana city staff. So also kind of marketing us, with that as well, that collaborative process as well with Urbana staff. I think that will also help as well, because then when we go to events that we're collaborating with, because we talked about as well collaborating with the Champaign Human Relations Commission. So if we're doing stuff with Urbana City, then I think that would also link us to other city officials. So I see us doing that visibility in kind of a twofold. So not only just like with Urbana City, but also as we move about throughout Champaign-Urbana. So I see that visibility, and then I see that PSA reaching out to employment, housing, and other branches. So I was looking at number 4 and number 5, as well as number 6.
Great. Well, I think we've got some wonderful ideas. Would we like to formally decide on a general statement of our goals for this year, the areas we want to concentrate in? Do you think that's a good idea? I hear outreach, I hear awareness and visibility of the commission, education for in the areas of employment, housing. Those things all tie together and can, as Alita said, they can kind of sometimes be accomplished with a single action. So, yes, Pete.
So for the training with employment, I know we've done some of that stuff before in different arenas. So I'm pretty sure that we've got some base for that we can figure out.
Okay.
In housing, I don't think we do. I don't think we've done a whole lot of that. The housing one strikes me, I think like Lolita said, is, given Danielle's presentation, really, really important, but I think it's the big chunk. There's so much, whether we want to start thinking about collaborating with folks or talking to folks about doing testing for discrimination. I think that's a huge thing to bite off, but I think it would be incredibly valuable.
Right.
We've talked about picking up where we left off on the employment with conviction record and starting to come up with a policy and something to send out to landlords about that. and saying, no, you can't discriminate on that basis. I think we really, that's a big one, and maybe what we want to do is sort of divide it up and figure out what we can do in smaller chunks. As far as number 5 goes, the one thing I want to say about that is I'm pretty sure TV stations and radio stations in general have space for playing PSAs, not just UPTV. So if we could produce it with UPTV, because I'm sure those folks would be happy to help us out, but then really start to spread it around,
Yes.
I think that'd be great. And the only other one I wanted to comment on, for 6, the meet and greet and the commissioner training, those seem to me to be sort of not one-shot deals in that I think there's multiple ones that we can do, but they're sort of very finite and I think it's something that you and Vasilia can work on getting those set up and just go with it. And I don't think it needs to be part of our sort of bigger goal-setting strategic plan. I think those are
Okay.
just easy to knock off and do from time to time.
And I have a question, Vasilia. Is it possible for us, in particular for the housing issue and the employment training for the businesses, that we could do how we used to kind of do like a little mini retreat and get together and come up with a plan and have steps so that we can break that down and figure out what do we need to do first and kind of create a sequential plan?
Basically, you guys can do whatever you decide you think makes sense. So, yeah.
Right. We want to be realistic, not take on too much right away, but I think we have almost a pretty clear consensus right now. We want to get our name out there. We are concerned about employment. We are concerned about housing. And I don't see, if we decide to focus on those two areas, employment and housing, in terms of larger initiatives, and some of the same techniques might work in both areas, that it might be helpful to have a retreat and hammer out some action items and specific things and get creative how we want to approach it. I know, in respect to what Pete was saying, that also places like MTD and the billboard people are also very open to PSAs and low or free exposure for things like that. And because I've done some of those things for the races as development chair, and signs in buses, signs on buses, signs up, reach a lot of people. It's part of an overall plan. And also, sometimes we do have a budget, and maybe sometimes too we'd want to pay for better placement and so forth, if we see things being effective. So, shall we have a retreat? Would someone like to propose that?
Yeah, I mean, we've done like, a half day or a full day up in the conference room with lunch and, I mean, an open meeting nonetheless, but
Yes.
just so we can sit down for a long period of time and hammer out some stuff.
That makes sense. Yes.
I would, yeah, I think that would be great.
Yes, go ahead.
You want to talk this evening about when that possibly could take place, or you rather wait till the other members are here?
Maybe if you send out a sort of poll for when are good weekend days to do one of these things, people can
Okay.
contribute and you can sort through and
Okay.
figure out.
Okay, that sounds good. Anybody else? Anybody wish to comment on that? Okay, that's great. We have no new business. A staff report. Lucia?
Okay, let's start with the vendors. 3 EEO certifications in front of you, a little different format, but hopefully it's easy to read and understand. We have one new company, Evergreen Solutions. And this is a company that placed a bid for, we're going to do the city is going to do a classifications and compensation study.
And the 14 and the 15 are below our threshold, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
So we would just normally give them the 2 years one way or the
Yes.
other. Okay.
And then varsity striping and construction is a renewal, and they're doing pavement marking project for the city.
So we don't have the full application in front of us. Is this an improvement from last time? Do we know?
For varsity,
Yeah,
I think it's about the same.
it's about where it was.
Yep.
And what did we give them last time?
I didn't check that, Peter, but I think we gave them a year, if I'm not mistaken.
So what are they at percentage-wise? Because I'm counting 15, if you include the females, as far as minority or underrepresented population, and they have a total of 47 employees. So not quite, they're not at 50%, but they're above the percentage that is recommended.
So usually we count it as, we don't count females independently. We don't count females included in minority representation. We do a separate figure for that.
Right, but you're counting, there's 9 African-American females, males,
Males.
1 African-American female, and 1 Hispanic female, so that's 11.
And 1 African-American female. Oh. One-
Yes.
Yeah,
11 African-American and
Right.
1 Hispanic.
so 12 total out of 47 is,
I'm not
you'd think I
counting-
could do math.
I'm not counting 12, I'm counting 11.
You've got 1 up in
In the
office and
office.
clerical, and 1 African-American in office and clerical, and then
Oh, okay.
9, 10, 11 down in laborers.
Oh, okay, I see it now, thank you.
So that's 25%, 25.5% representation.
Yeah. That's pretty good. Is there a motion on these recommendations?
What were the recommendations? What are the staff
2
recommends
years.
2 years for
For
everybody?
all. Mhm.
I don't have a problem with the recommendation. I think varsity is so small that, I mean, could they do better? Yes, but it's above the percentage that we look at as
Yeah.
a kind of a guide. We can continue to encourage them to improve their recruitment efforts. I don't know, what do you guys think?
Yeah, 25% representation, minority representation, is actually not too terrible for what we see, so. I'll make the motion to approve Evergreen Solutions, Varsity Striping and Construction, and Standard Associates for 2 years each. Yeah, so moved.
I'll second.
Okay. So Pete has moved and Carol has seconded to accept the 2-year recommendations. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? The motion carries. And the HRO activity report.
Okay. Well, back in January, I reported that there were I had 2 open complaints that I was investigating. I am very happy to report that both of those cases have been resolved. One was, a settlement was actually reached with the employer and the complainant, and the other was a no probable cause finding. So, okay. As far as the informal phone inquiry, basically phone, I've had a number of ones that did not fit under the auspices and the authority of the Urbana Human Rights Ordinance. One was a wage and hour inquiry. One was a patient care situation that they were very concerned about, but unfortunately, our ordinance does not address those kinds of issues. The other one was employment discrimination complaint, and but it was, when I say outside of our jurisdiction, it would, no, not geographically, but they were a part of a different taxing body, and therefore those people who, employers who are under the different taxing body does not, our ordinance does not have authority over those folks. So, and the last one, I believe, was a, well, no, it was a Section 8 inquiry, and I referred the person on to the Housing Authority. And the last one was an employment discrimination inquiry. Just the pre-screening that I did over the phone, the person seemed to have fit within our ordinance, but unfortunately, the individual did not follow through and keep the appointment. So currently, there are no formal complaints being investigated by the office. Any questions?
I do have a question about the patient care inquiry. Why was that out of our jurisdiction? Because the ordinance isn't that regarded as a
Public
public
accommodation.
accommodation? Yeah.
It was more of a medical situation than
Okay.
a refusal of service or anything like that.
Okay.
Mhm.
Got it. Thank you.
And I just jotted down a few things under community activity. I wanted all of you to know that the census is online. Were you guys aware of that? And I've just included the link so that you can go directly to it. Some of the staff here at the city claims that it only takes about 10 or 15 minutes. I have not tried it, so I can't swear to that, but that is available. I'm still working on the minority procurement plan, the amendments to that ordinance, as well as working towards trying to come up with a partnership with Champaign so that we can, both cities will have the same vendors who have certified in one system. So that's what we're working on now. And hopefully we'll be able to implement that at the first of the new fiscal year. There's a Disability Expo, and I put the link so that you guys could go check it out. You have a web page, and we're participating. We're actually going to be present if they're still gathering on the 28th. I have reserved a couple of tables, and we will have material and information about the commission at that gathering. And then the last one is I'm still planning on trying to get a half-day informational kind of workshop about different opportunities job opportunities in the technology field. So hopefully I'll have a little bit more to share with you at our next meeting.
Thank you, Visilia.
You're welcome.
Are there any announcements? I have a kind of announcement. With all due affection to my husband, I'm dropping his surname and returning to my original maiden name of Francis Frigberg. So just the Baker falls off. Has not happened legally yet, but
Well, thank you.
that's what I'm doing. Always wanted to, and so there you are. If there's nothing else, our
I do
business.
have an announcement.
Yes.
I just wanted to share with you guys that Books to Prisoners is having their biannual book sale. It's going to be April 11th at the Independent Media Center, and it's going to be from 9 to 6 p.m., and this is where we're selling books which range from 50 cents to $2, and this is to help kind of defer the cost where we're shipping books at no cost to inmates in the state of Illinois, and this is for state and federal persons who are incarcerated. So have spare time, drop by.
What's the date again?
It's April 11th,
Okay.
and it's going to be at the Independent Media Center, which is where the post office is. So it's going to be there. So
Cool.
drop by.
Very nice, thank you. Anybody else? All right, our meeting is adjourned.